The time has come. I have done enough research that I can now present to you the 10 greatest manga of all time. Actually, that was a lie. That title was clickbait, and I'm really just here to rank everything that I've read so far. But don't go anywhere. Stick around, let me explain, and I'll tell you exactly what we're doing here, because I realized this year that I've read 10 manga, and I can rank them all for you, and call it the greatest manga of all time list. And then next year when I read more, and we'll get to see what moves up and what moves down, and which ones leave the list and which ones get added to the list. It's going to be a lot of fun as we move forward in time, I promise. But as of this year, it's really just, let's rank the shit I've read. And actually, after I had this big revelation that I'd read 10 manga and I was going to do a top 10 list, I realized, actually, it's only 9. So that was even more clickbait than we first assumed. Anyway, ranking the 9 manga that I happen to have read. Now, rules here. I have to have read the entire manga. So as of right now, I'm currently doing read-throughs on the channel of Vagabond and Trigun. I have not finished either of those, so those are not allowed to be on this list. They will be on this list next year, I'm sure of it. But as of right now, not eligible. So let's start with number 9. I almost read like a real quick one-shot to just to get a 10th one on here, and then I just ran out of time. I didn't have time to do anything like that, so I said, fuck it, 9 it is. Starting off with number 9, the worst of everything that I have read so far, period, hands down, is Gyo. And I don't think that's surprising to anybody if you followed me and my journey here and watched anything that as I've gone through these, because I think I have videos for every single one of these. Yeah, there is a video for every single one of these manga that I'm getting ready to talk about on the channel. So you can pretty much go back and verify, or if you followed me on this channel, you probably won't be too terribly surprised with how this plays out. Although, you know, if I'm being honest, when I started actually applying numbers to these manga as I went through it, even I was surprised at where some of them landed on the list. So yeah, this might be more jarring than you think. Anyway, back to Gyo, and it's just not great. It's not scary, it's not engaging. I wasn't thrilled with it. I think I gave it a 6 or something like that, which is above average, but it's not a great score. And it's just not the best thing that I've ever read, period, let alone manga, anything. And I don't expect it to be on the list next year. It's really just a placeholder because I didn't have anything else to put on the list. Sorry, Gyo. And I love Junji Ito. I mean, he's really good, but that's just not his best work, I don't think. Which leads me to number 8, which is also going to lead me to one of my more controversial decisions that I think people might not necessarily love. And I agonized over this. This was one of the hardest decisions that I had to make, putting this list together, just because it felt unfair to the manga for it to go at number 8, which is real close to the bottom of the list. But I couldn't bring myself to put it any higher, and that would be Poon Poon. It just isn't my cup of tea. It was written so well. It was drawn so well. It was engaging. It was grim. It was dark. It was heartbreaking at times. There were a lot of things that it did, but I didn't engage with the story. I didn't enjoy the story at all. I didn't enjoy any part of reading it, and I understand that that's probably that's kind of the point of going through it. You're not supposed to enjoy that story. It is supposed to do that to you. I mean, that's part of the purpose of it. But I didn't enjoy it, and I didn't engage with it in the way that I think you're supposed to engage with it. And I didn't identify with Poon Poon, like, at all, in any sense. And I can identify with a lot of stuff. I can identify with depression. I can identify with trauma. I can identify with abuse to a certain extent. And it just, not any bit of it resonated with me, and I don't know why. That's not to say that it wasn't good. That's not to say that it can't be, say, your favorite thing ever. It just, it's something about it. The further I get away from it and the more I think about it and look back on it, I don't know what I didn't engage with. But between the fact that I didn't enjoy reading it, as well done as it was, and for some reason I didn't engage with it, I can't, in good conscience, put it any higher on this list than number 8. And that brings us to number 7, and that is Battle Angel Alita. And it is, let's see, for such a short little manga, this really, really surprised me in what it was able to do in the short amount of time that it had. The amount of character development that Alita in particular got, just the sheer number and volume of characters that we were able to cycle in and out of the story, and they all felt rich, they all felt realized, they all felt like their own little character, even if they only were there for, say, a volume and then stepped out. It was great character-wise. I just really was impressed with what Alita was able to achieve. Which brings us to number 6 on the list, which is Monster. And this one isn't entirely surprising to me that it's on the back half of the list. It was so good for what it was. It was so good as a thriller. It was so good for its tension. It was so good for its soap opera-ishness. But it had enough shortcomings that there was no way it was ever going to make it to the tippity top of the list. It was just too convenient. Everything was connected in way too many ways. It was just, for lack of a better word, it was pretty unbelievable start to finish. It was, there's a, what is that? What am I trying to say? The idea of suspension of disbelief, and it stretched your suspension of disbelief to basically to a breaking point a couple of different times. But that only keeps it from being higher on the list, because that's not to say that it didn't truly excel at being a tense thriller, which ultimately, at the end of the day, was its job. So, and it succeeded definitely at that. And as far as the ending was concerned, amazingly satisfying ending. Stuck the landing, I'll say that much. Anyway, moving on to number 5. And number 5 is Dorohedoro. And this one surprised me in the sense that this shouldn't be my thing. It's like this real slapstick comedy thing, and it's real slice of lifey, and it's real, nothing about this screams me. And I absolutely loved every second of it for the most part. I enjoyed most of the characters. I mean, fucking hashtag Ibisu's the best, but yeah, it was great. I really, really enjoyed this one, and I would not, on paper, this shouldn't even be my thing, but it was great, and I absolutely loved it. Number 5. And then moving on to number 4, Knights of Sidonia. This was another one that kind of surprised me once I started putting the list together, that I know a lot of you people are probably looking at this going, what the fuck? How in God's name does Knights of Sidonia get to go higher than Monster and Goodnight Poon Poon? I don't know, but I sat there and I rearranged them, and I just couldn't bring myself to bring it down on the list. It was just that enjoyable. It is so much fun, as it wasn't there, and there's some ridiculous, I even said in my video of it, this shouldn't work. You shouldn't, I would not want a harem mixed with my Tsutomu Nihei. Not in any reality can I imagine myself ever wanting that. But that's what I got, and I loved every second of it. From the action to the comedy to just Nihei's art in general. Nihei's art deserves some kind of an award. I don't know what it is. I love it so much. But it's just great. And it's a damn good time. There are things that the manga further up on this list do better than Knights of Sidonia. Storytelling and character work and all kinds of other things far outshine Knights of Sidonia in, say, Dorohedoro or even Monster. But for some reason, there's just an X factor in Knights of Sidonia. It was a fun read. I enjoyed reading it so much more than some of those other ones. I don't really know how to explain it, and I'm not going to apologize for it either. It's number 4, Knights of Sidonia. And here we go to the top 3. The 3 greatest manga of all time, or at least the ones that I've read. And number 3, I don't think it's going to be too super surprising that it didn't land at the top, and it is Uzumaki. It is the other Junji Ito that's on this list. It is wonderful. It actually took the number 3 slot on my top 10 horror books of all time video as well. So it might just be, we'll just have to make more lists and get Uzumaki to get the number 3 slot for some reason. Anyway, it is just haunting. It is almost too long. I said in my video on that it felt like it was too long, and it drug in the middle, and I didn't enjoy some of the middle, but then the payoffs at the end where it really gives you that gut punch kind of are dependent on some of the slower chapters. So would it have worked without those middle chapters? And if it wasn't as long as it was, would it ultimately have been as good as it was? I don't know, but it was great. Good enough to be on my top 10 horror books of all time. And one of the reasons why I say, honestly, that I feel like manga can stand shoulder to shoulder with any other book in any other genre, in any other type of literature, and just stand there with its head held high and very proud. And there's multiple series on here that have proven that to me. But that was one of the first standouts where I was like, oh, okay. Well, that and Berserk, if I'm being honest. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So anyway, number 3, Uzumaki. Now we're down to the top 2, and there's only 2 left, and this might be the worst decision that I had to make, and I have a feeling that nobody's going to properly appreciate what I have to do here. And number 2 has to go to Berserk. And I am very sorry to everybody in the manga community for that, because this is the most controversial decision that I've made, right? Right? Everybody universally agrees that this is number 1, and I just dropped it down at number 2. I can't give it number 1 because there's another one on this list that just has to be number 1. It has to be. This one is number 2. It is phenomenal. It is wonderful. It is what started my entire journey down this manga road, and I cannot be more thankful for it. It is just one of the best of the best. It will always be one of the best, but I don't think it is that number 1 spot. There are arcs in this manga that I would call perfect. 10 out of 10. That arc is perfect. All of the arcs I cannot say that about all of the arcs. Therefore, I cannot say that this manga as a whole is a 10 out of 10. I don't think it is. I think it dips down into the 9s because some of the arcs dip down. The consistency of the quality is not solid. There are very high highs, and then it'll dip in quality a bit here and there. Now, that is to be expected. For God's sake, it's been on running for like 40 fucking years. There's going to be dips in quality. Actually, that's probably the main problem with the consistency of it, is it's really, really, really difficult to maintain that kind of consistency over that long of a period of time. So it is going to be a little bit unfair that it is being dinged for its dips in consistency because you try to do something for 40 years and never dip in quality. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it's not, it's going to dip, I guess is what I'm saying. And then the other thing to it is there are just things in here that's just not my thing. I'm much more of a science fiction reader than I am a fantasy reader, and I am much more inclined to certain styles of writing versus others. And as much as there is baked into Berserk, that's really my thing, my cup of tea, right up my alley. There's enough other things baked into it that I could honestly do it without. I wouldn't say that they're bad by any stretch of the imagination, but they're just things, there are elements added in there that I'm like, if that was missing, I'd be fine. You know, it's just going to take like a really high, like 9.5 rating or something like that, and sit at number 2. Great. If you haven't read it, I don't, let's be real, you all have, but if for some reason you haven't, go get it, because like I said, it is the thing that caused me to do this journey in the first place, and I am so grateful and thankful to it for that. Now, number 1, if you've been keeping track in any way, shape, or form, you already know that it's going to be Blam. This is maybe controversial. I don't know. Does anybody else feel this way? It's just the best. It is way more consistent than Berserk is. Now, that's not fair. I already mentioned this. That's not fair because this is only 6 volumes long. Or at least it's 6 volumes in the ones I have. Maybe it's more like 12. So it's a much shorter run. So it's much simpler for it to just nail that consistency and wrap it up and move on to something else. When you're telling a shorter, more concise story, it is easier to be consistent in that shorter and more concise period. But then on top of that, there is also the artwork, which I should have mentioned in Berserk, because Berserk's art is some of the best art you will ever see in manga, but so is Nihei. And Nihei's got a different kind of a scratchy style, a messy style, I don't know how to sum it, I don't know if it's angry, I don't know what it is, but there is a difference in his style, something that really just appeals to me. I can just get lost in one of his pages for a while in a way that I just don't in other manga. He's just got something that appeals to me in general. And then the writing, or lack thereof. When you go 20 pages without any words whatsoever and you just wander through the megastructure, it's haunting and it's lonely and it's sterile. It just creates this feeling of almost emptiness as you wander through this, and you don't know where it's going, you don't know what it's doing. The story is a mystery. It's a story of a man in search of a gene that might save this megastructure that's out of control. I'm not convinced it will if he ever does find it. It sounds like something too good to be true. Like in this weird haunting story, it sounds too good to be true that if you just find this gene, everything's going to start getting better. And I don't think that's the case, but he's just a man on a mission and he won't be deterred. And then you don't even really get conclusion. You get a conclusion to the story. It ends. But what did it mean? Does he get it? Who the fuck knows? What was the kid? Was the kid was that what he was looking for? Did any of it mean anything? I don't know. And that's another factor of why it's just so great. Because that kind of bullshit fucking ending where you get everything you've been built to, this mystery, everything, did it mean anything? I don't know. Did you get any answers? Not really. You have to go back and you can read it again. You might pick up on a few more things here and there throughout the story, but you're never gonna get it all. You're never gonna get it fed to you. And this is Nihei. Back when Nihei did what he wanted to do back before the world kind of pushed against him. Back before the world pushed back and told him, no, we don't like that. And he started to try and add a little bit more trends into his writing, a little bit more geared towards what the people want. That's where you get your Knights of Sidonia and stuff like that. And from what I hear, some of his other stuff, it feels like he's tried to lean more and more into what the people want so that his stuff sells better, so that he can continue to do what he wants to do for a living. But this is back when he said, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. And I love it. And I'm that 1% of the world that said, no, do this again, because this was the greatest thing ever. This is what I want. It's so good. It's so lonely. And it's just something special. It really, really is. Number one. Anyway, if you could all do me one big favor, just jump down into the comments. Please let me know exactly what your favorite manga of all time is. Maybe you can tell me just how wrong my list is. And I would love it. I would appreciate it. Anyway, as always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.